The Democrats are saying a lot of amazing words that we needed to hear, like constitutional crisis. However, they're not actually giving us any substance of action or things that they can concretely do in order to change our reality, apart from, hey, we need two senators to impeach, which wouldn't solve it because then JD would be the president, and the same handlers that is Donald Trump are the ones behind JD. It seems that the only solutions they have are the traditional ones that just have not worked, like congressional action. They don't have the power, so they say we don't have the numbers, which is true. They could have solved that by actually positioning a campaign in 2024 that actually made people have the incentive to go out and vote blue for local election. However, let's not judge the strategy right now. And particularly, I would blame that not on Harris, but on the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, and I have no confidence that this new committee will do anything differently. Why? Because if I was a DNC chair, I would be screaming right now in public about how we're going to mobilize and how we are exactly going to mobilize and what the people at the bottom should do, what the voters should do in order to do this, right? But they don't. Why? Because of decorum or because they like to keep it on the low. But the thing is, when they keep it on the low, we don't actually know if they have a plan or no plan. Like Joe Biden, people said he had a plan. He was going to make sure that the Equal Rights Amendment became part of the Constitution. But all he did like 2 days before he left was that he said, hey, it's law, and then didn't actually go and tell the archivist to do it because he said de jure, according to rightful entitlement or claim. That wasn't his job to tell the archivist. The archivist could have done it, but who's going to tell her? She doesn't have to do it unless she's told, but technically he doesn't have to tell her. So in his reality, who told her? No one. So in that reality, we didn't actually have a plan, right? So De Jure basically keeps us stuck in these channels and chambers that we cannot go through unless we're allowed to go through that, right? However, the thing with Congress is that it didn't maximize its congressional powers or the constitutional powers prior to this whole even inauguration and even before the certification. I don't want to go back to that because that's things that already occurred and we need to focus on the now. But as a result, their plans didn't work out. And ultimately, I believe why Senator Adam Schiff invited the January 6th cop was maybe to pull out the heartstrings of Republicans. It didn't work, and I think that's probably what they want, to pull out the heartstrings of Republicans. But that's not going to work. That's never worked on a tyranny because they already have the power. They're consolidating the power, so Democrats don't have that power of ethics or patriotism because the Republican Party on the foundation is built on anti-Constitution. The voters don't know this, but that the textualism tells us that they don't like the Constitution. They want to remove it and gut it so that they can renew and go back to the Articles of Confederation, no taxation, reduce government spending, and small federal government. So they're expecting for the other side to abide by an honor code that they already never cared to abide by. And that is why instead of creating a more perfect union, the Republicans have just been focused on gutting our union. But this leaves us at a standstill because yes, Democrats don't have the numbers in order even to impeach, although that wouldn't solve our problem. And what Democrats have to realize is that this will not be solved through traditional means like congressional action, like litigation, because law takes too long. People are going to be harmed as we wait. So I do believe that they believe that they don't have congressional resolve, which would be true. In that reality, the fixes that they have aren't going to be traditional, they're going to be non-traditional. Particularly if I was in Congress, I would be having that relationship with the entities and relationships abroad, right? Trying to see in what way we can maximize our authorities here and what channels we have to go through in order to position that pressure that will ultimately position that economic pressure that forces a resolve in Congress. You see how Republican Congress people were like, hey, just don't tariff this specific industry because we rely on this. But also, I'll be guiding Americans as to what actually can we do because they're very vague. They're like, this is a constitutional crisis. You have to fight. But then they just tell you to call your representatives. What's going to happen? If our votes don't matter because Congress is basically bought out by special interests and corporations, why would these Republican senators care about our calls when corporations are going to put them in the seats again? You make it make sense, Democrats. Because within a tyranny and fascism, I worry about the safety of the people calling the Republicans and telling them all sorts of things. So I must myself don't tell people to do that. You know what would happen to dissidents or critics of the government in Latin America? They would pick them up. Enforced disappearance is what it's called. Pick them up, torture them a bit, I mean a bit, a lot, and then eventually they throw them on a plane, and sometimes they're alive, sometimes they're not. Slash them in the middle, throw them out. Fish food. Why governments prefer methods like this is because if there is no record of where you are, then you're technically not unalived, right? And they don't know if it's the government. Even if it's the government, can they put two and two together? There's nothing to prove it. So in this reality, as a conflict scholar, I withhold from telling people contact your Republicans because I don't want to position myself in a way where I put you in an unsafe way, right? So this whole pressuring Republicans to do the right thing, yes, it can work, and if you're bold enough, you should do that. However, for our strategy to be this, it doesn't make sense. And ultimately, we look at this. Executive failed us, Former President Joe Biden did nothing. Possibly there was an idea or a plan and it didn't go through, so now we're here. The courts aren't going to do anything. They're just going to watch because they're courts. Congress hasn't done anything. Currently, Democrats don't have the numbers. So obviously, we're effed there. So what's left? What's left? It's not going to be a saving from the top to bottom. That pressure has to be from the bottom up. The other alternative is the military. However, a lot of them are MAGAs, so it's a hit or miss. And ultimately, we come to the conclusion of where we are, which is that whatever topples is only going to come from the bottom. Now, the question becomes, what does that mean for us? What does that mean in regards to what we're willing to put forth in order to ensure that this is not our reality? Because the Chicago Boys, which is a group of incel men like the ones we have in Doji, who were brought over to the United States. They learned the economy, all of that stuff, went back to Chile, and their job was basically to destabilize the economy and then to make it popular for Pinochet, so the dictator, to come to fruition. And then everyone was thanking him for the economy and stuff like that when he gutted all of these other things. And then the dictatorship lasted from 1973 to 1990. Now you're going to think, well, he's going to be gone by then. That's not the thing. He's not the one they want to continue there. They want to maintain the ideology. Mexico, perfect dictatorship. It lasted over 70 years, the PRI party. It was different democratically elected officials, but this party literally controlled all three branches. And they were democratically elected, but it lasted over 70 years. And it was a conservative neoliberal party, and the people suffered. So we're literally doing the very same things that all other countries have done and have literally saw as failures. We're doing that, and we're just we're immune to it. That's American exceptionalism, right? We're it's not gonna impact us. It does. So in this reality, DC has fallen. DC has fallen because they don't have any traditional congressional resolve. And the resolve that there is, say impeachment, is a high reach, but also then we get JD. We need the whole ticket gone. Take it gone. If it's not fancy stuff, it has to be Amendment 14, Section 3. I know it's complicated. It has a lot of ambiguity, but that's the only way in which we can get the entire ticket gone. That or fancy stuff. A hybrid of both, but we have to force that from the bottom up. And, the Congress, through the quorum, isn't going to want to stray from tradition, but we have to force them to maximize constitutional power. And then also, our Democrats, they shouldn't be voting for any of the cabinets. If they're going to pass and become part of the cabinet, then fine, but don't give Democrat support. Delay it. They're not doing any of this. I don't know if it's because they're just gullible, they're just useless, or they just don't have any actual collective unity. And I think they just accepted that it's going to be for as long as how it is because they don't have any resolve, so it has to be us. No one will save us but ourselves.